I am recording this because I need anyone to believe me. By the time you finish listening, you might wish you had never clicked play. But you clicked anyway. Did you not? Curiosity is expensive. Trust me. I know. The first thing you should know about me is that I was desperate. Rent was late again, my car payment was overdue, and the fridge contained half a bottle of ketchup and a questionable piece of cheese. I was not reckless by nature, just cornered. So when I saw the flyer taped to the bus stop volunteers wanted, clinical study, generous compensation, no experience necessary, I tore it down without thinking. The address led me to a small industrial park on the edge of town, a place that felt like an afterthought. Crumbling asphalt, flickering streetlights, and a building with no sign. Its windows were mirrored, reflecting the world but giving nothing back. That should have been my first clue. Inside, everything was too clean. Not hospital clean, unnervingly clean. The air smelled like ozone and lemons, sharp enough to sting. A receptionist in a lab coat greeted me with a practiced smile that never touched her eyes. Her badge said Marla, but the letters seemed slightly off, as though the font was borrowed from some other world's alphabet and reluctantly translated. She handed me a clipboard thick with forms. "Standard waivers," she said lightly. The legal jargon swam before my eyes. Phrases like, "You agree to observational variance in temporal perception and you relinquish all claims to subjective experience anomalies." I have left, trying to mask unease. Temporal perception variance. What is that siffy for? Jet lag? Marla's smile widened, just a fraction far. It is nothing you need to worry about. The waiting room held 3 other volunteers, a nervous-looking college kid in a hoodie, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes, and a man in a suit scrolling through his phone like this was just another Tuesday. No one spoke. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered in an irregular rhythm. Blink, blink, blink. Pause. Blink. It reminded me of a heartbeat skipping. They called my name. The hallway they led me down seemed longer than the building should have allowed. Doors lined the walls, all unmarked except for subtle numbers etched too faintly to read. I passed one door ajar and thought I saw someone inside, just the edge of a white sleeve vanishing around a corner. When I glanced back, the room was empty. The exam room had no windows. A doctor, if that is what he was introduced himself as. Dr. Keene. His voice was soft but precise, like a scalpel. He asked about my health, my stress levels, my sleep. I admitted I had not been sleeping well. But who had? He nodded as though that were exactly what he wanted to hear. The injection was small and painless. A clear syringe slid into my vein, cool and unremarkable. They told me to wait an hour for observation. At first, nothing happened. I sat on the exam table scrolling through my phone, checking social media, texting a friend some sarcastic comment about selling my soul for grocery money. But then, the clock on the wall caught my eye. Its second hand ticked backward for 3 beats before continuing forward as if nothing had changed. I blinked hard. Maybe the fluorescent flicker was messing with me. But The room fell. Wrong. The hum of the lights deepened into a low thrumming, almost like a voice whispering below the range of hearing. The door creaked open, though I had not touched it. A shadow stretched across the linoleum floor longer than it should have been. Longer than any human could cast. I stepped into the hallway. The receptionist desk was empty now. The hallway seemed even longer, stretching into a perspective that made my eyes ache. A faint echo of footsteps mine followed a half-beat behind. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Side effects maybe. Dizziness or disorientation were normal. I forced a laugh to steady my nerves. The sound came out brittle. At the corner, I swore I heard someone say my name. Soft, intimate, just a breath against my ear. Eli. I spun around. The hallway behind me was empty, but I noticed something strange. The shadow from before was still there on the floor, even though I was standing perfectly still under harsh light. It twitched. I backed toward the waiting room, eager to leave. The 3 other volunteers were gone. The chairs were perfectly arranged, cushions undented, as though no one had sat there. The receptionist's clipboard was missing from the counter. Only the faint smell of ozone and lemons lingered. Sharper now, almost metallic. Then a door slammed somewhere deep in the building. The sound echoed unnaturally, ricocheting off the sterile walls. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my friend. "You okay?" You texted me a blank message like 3 times. I checked my sent messages. Sure enough, 3 empty texts had gone out, each time stamped 5 minutes in the future. I nearly bolted for the exit. Right then, but I stopped myself. The money I needed that. And besides, walking out would mean admitting I was scared of nothing, just nerves. Right? Dr. Keene appeared suddenly in the hallway, smiling that precise scalpel smile. "Everything is proceeding as expected," he said. "You may feel minor distortion. Perfectly safe. I wanted to demand answers, to ask why the clocks were wrong, or why the others had vanished." But something in his gaze rooted me to the floor. A quiet suggestion. Asking would not help, so I nodded, pretending to accept his reassurance, pretending I did not notice the faint whisper still coiling around the edges of the silence. As I stepped outside, the sun seemed too bright, too sharp, as though the world had been dialed up a notch without my consent. The street looked the same, yet off. A traffic light flicked green, too yellow, too red in the wrong order. A bird hovered midair for just a fraction too long before flapping its wings again. I should have walked away then. I should have taken my strange little paycheck and disappeared, but instead, I shoved the waiver into my bag, convinced myself I was imagining things, and told myself I could handle whatever came next. I told myself a lie. I should have walked out then. I whisper now, my voice trembling as I remember. But I wanted the money more than I wanted to be safe. I woke the next morning in my apartment with the uneasy sense that the world had shifted while I slept. It was not a nightmare hangover, it was subtler than that, like a song stuck just out of hearing range. My clock read 7:32 a.m., but the sun outside my window had the muted glow of late afternoon. The first odd thing I noticed was the taste in my mouth metallic, like I had been sucking on a penny. The second was the faint vibration running through the floorboards, as if some massive machine deep underground was waking up. I tried to shake it off with coffee. My cheap percolator sputtered and hissed, filling the kitchen with the familiar smell. But when I blinked, I could have sworn the steam from my mug coiled into lettuce my own name, curling upward before dissolving. I laughed nervously. Okay, Eli, get a grip. Dry humor always helped. Maybe the serum caused weird sensory effects. The consent form had mentioned mild perceptual distortion. I convinced myself it was nothing worse than a trippy hangover. By noon, things got stranger. I was scrolling through a message board about urban legends, one of my guilty pleasures, when a post caught my eye. Participants wanted controlled observation of anomalies. Do not blink. The timestamp said it was posted 5 minutes ago, but when I clicked, the post vanished, replaced by an error page. A notification pinged. A friend, Jenna, had sent me a meme about haunted microwaves. I chuckled, typed out a response, and watched the letters on my screen rearrange themselves. Mid-sentence, ITCs, through you. My hands froze on the keyboard. When I blinked, my reply had reverted to normal text. I told myself to breathe. Stress and suggestion could do weird things to perception. That night, I called the research center to check in, just to feel normal. The receptionist's voice was perfectly polite, but she insisted no one named Marla worked there. You must have misheard, she said with a small laugh that did not sound real. As I hung up, a sound from the hallway outside my apartment caught my attention, a faint scraping, like someone dragging a chair across linoleum. I checked the peephole. Nothing. Back in the living room, my wall clock ticked irregularly, tick-tock, tick. I stared until my vision blurred. The second hand slowed, then reversed, then skipped ahead. Around 2 a.m., I woke again, not in bed, but standing barefoot in my kitchen. My phone was in my hand, the screen glowing. 3 unsent messages filled the draft box. Empty texts addressed to numbers I did not recognize. The floor beneath my feet felt too soft, almost like carpet, even though I had hardwood. A whisper brushed my ear, a voice so quiet I could barely register it, but it spoke my name again. I spun around, heart pounding. My apartment was still and dark. The next day I tried to resume normal life. Work was impossible. I kept losing track of time. I would look up from my desk and find an hour had vanished, or that my email drafts were full of single words. Observe. Look behind. At lunch, I overheard two co-workers gossiping about a woman who had gone missing. The same woman I remembered from the studious waiting room. My stomach dropped. When I asked for details, they frowned. What woman? They asked. That evening, I returned to the biotech building. Maybe I needed answers. Maybe I just wanted proof that my world was still tethered to something. But when I reached the industrial park, the building was dark and empty. The windows were no longer mirror, just black voids. A man in a delivery uniform walked past. I asked if he had seen a clinic here. He squinted. Clinic? Buddy, that place has been abandoned for years. I left a brittle sound that cracked in the quiet. Back home, I tried to record my thoughts. I set my phone on the coffee table, hit record, and started speaking about the injection, the clock, the whispers. When I played it back, my voice was gone. The recording was staticked in a faint, unfamiliar voice. He watches himself now. The next morning, my reflection lagged. When I moved my arm to brush my hair, the mirror showed the movement a heartbeat too late. I texted Jenna. Okay, something is wrong, she replied with a joking, What? Ghosts again, I called her. She laughed, told me to chill out, that I always overthink things. She said maybe the serum had some psychological side effects and I was psyching myself out. Maybe, I said, though my throat felt dry. That night, while brushing my teeth, I saw it behind me in the bathroom mirror. A figure stood at the end of the hallway. It was me, same shirt, same tired eyes, but its mouth curled into a grin that was not mine. I spun around, hallway empty. I turned back to the mirror. The figure was gone, but a smudge remained on the glass where its hand had pressed 5 perfect fingerprints, each slightly too long. I forced a laugh. My chest tight. Must be stress, I whispered to myself. My voice cracked halfway through. I slept with the light on, but even then, I could feel it. The air had changed too dense, too aware. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of the clinic's hallway stretching forever. Mightable stood at the far end, waiting. When I woke, my phone displayed a new alarm I had not set. 3:33 a.m. Observe. The next evening, while scrolling through my photos, I found an image I had not taken. It showed my apartment from an impossible angle high in the corner of the room, as if the ceiling had eyes. I whispered aloud, Who's there? The apartment seemed to listen. A faint creak came from the closet door. It was closed, but the shadow beneath it was wrong, too long, too crooked. I reached for the knob, hesitated, then laughed nervously to no one. It is fine. It is fine. I opened the door. Nothing but coats. But for a moment, I thought, one of the sleeves twitched, as if withdrawing from my touch. That night, the whisper returned. Now, do not blink. My heart raced as I froze, staring into the darkness of my own bedroom. The silence between the whispers felt heavy, alive. I did not sleep. Instead, I watched the clock tick backward, forward, backward while the walls seemed to breathe. I blinked, and something moved. I Floors stayed where you left them, hallways led somewhere, and walls did not breathe. That illusion shattered on the third night. By then, my apartment was a haunted diorama of wrongness. The clocks refused to agree with each other. The kitchen smelled faintly of antiseptic, like the lab had followed me home. Even my own memories felt tampered with. I would reach for a cup I was certain I had washed, only to find it still dirty in the sink, the water inside somehow warm. I decided I could not stay there. My pulse throbbed behind my eyes as I drove back to the biotech building. I told myself I was just going to demand answers, maybe even demand a refund. My hands shook on the steering wheel. The industrial park was deserted. The building's windows were dark and dusted with grime, but when I tried the door, it opened. The reception desk was empty again, but the faint smell of ozone and lemons still lingered, sharper now, almost predatory. I called out, "Hello, Dr. Keene," and my voice came back wrong, as if the hallway repeated it in another accent. The fluorescent lights flickered, humming a low, nervous tune. As I stepped farther inside, the floor beneath me seemed to stretch. I walked for what felt like 20 minutes down a corridor that should have been 20 feet. Doors appeared and vanished on either side, one moment labeled with numbers, the next bare. My phone's compass spun wildly. Turning a corner, I froze. Ahead of me, a security camera pointed at the ceiling, filming nothing. On the monitor beside it, I saw the feed, but instead of the ceiling, it showed me, standing in the hallway. My chest tightened. I waved my hand. The figure on the screen did not move. Something whispered my name again, closer than ever. The whisper was my own voice. I backed into a doorway and found myself in a small lab. Stainless steel tables gleamed under two bright lights. A stack of folders sat abandoned, some papers half-burned, others blacked out with thick marker. The top page bore the heading, Phase 2, Subject Integration. Beneath it, Observer observed, boundary unstable. Further blurring may result in systemic collapse. My fingers trembled as I flipped pages. Grainy photographs showed participants staring at their own reflections, faces distorted like melted wax. Notes in the margin read, "Perception creates existence must control observers. A sound of faint dragging made me look up." A door at the far end of the lab was ajar, revealing another corridor beyond. I should have left. I know that now. But curiosity is a parasite. I stepped through. The corridor bent unnaturally, like a spine too flexible. My footsteps echoed a half-beat late, as though someone was walking just out of sync with me. Doors led to impossible rooms. A closet that opened onto a stairwell spiraling downward without end. A supply room containing my own living room furniture, arranged precisely. I stumbled into a storage chamber where the walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. In the center stood a steel cage, its door hanging open. Inside, a chair bolted to the floor faced a mirror that reflected not the room but a starless void. Scratched into the chair's armrest were the words, "Stay still." My phone buzzed violently, no signal, just static on the screen. The static formed letters for a second. "Look behind you." I spun around. The hallway behind me was gone. In its place, another lab. This one impossibly vast. Rows of observation windows lined the walls, each showing a different version of the building, some dark, some on fire, some filled with pale figures watching me. Alarms blared without warning to shrill, pulsing wail that rattled my teeth. Red lights bathed everything in frantic color. I ran blindly, choosing corridors that seemed less hostile, but the building folded in on itself. A door I had just passed now appeared ahead of me. A hallway looped back to its own beginning. The whisper returned, louder now, layered with static. "Stay still." I froze, chest heaving, heart threatening to break free. The alarms continued, but the walls seemed to calm us. If the building itself held its breath, something brushed past me, unseen but immense. The air turned cold and thick. I inched forward and saw a figure at the end of the corridor, me again, or something using my shape. Its grin was impossibly wide, and its eyes were empty sockets filled with static. The alarms cut out abruptly. In the ringing silence, the distorted voice spoke again, perfectly calm now. "Integration begins." The floor beneath me warped like liquid. My foot sank an inch before finding purchase. The hallway tilted sideways. Gravity felt optional. I bolted. Doors slammed shut behind me, some locking with heavy metallic thuds, others vanishing entirely. I turned a corner and found myself back in the reception area. Except the receptionist's desk was now covered in claw marks. The clipboard lay shattered on the floor, its pages blank. The front door was ahead, but it seemed farther than physics should allow. Every step forward stretched a space between us. Behind me, soft footsteps followed always, just out of sight. I sprinted, shouting for help, but my voice fractured, splitting into echoes that mocked me. The door finally loomed close. I shoved it open and tumbled into night air. But the sky above was wrong. The stars arranged themselves into letters for a heartbeat seeing makes it real before. Scattering again, I fell to my knees, gasping. Then the alarms roared back to life inside the building, and every window glowed white through the glass. Dozens of my doubles stood watching, Some smiled, some wept. All whispered the same words. Stay still. I ran for my car, fumbling the keys. As I drove away, the world outside flickered, buildings momentarily swapped places. Streetlights turned to shapes I could not name. The road beneath me seemed to stretch and contract like a living thing. Only when I reached the outskirts of town did the flickers stop. The stars looked normal again. My phone lit up with a missed call notifications from my own number. I did not answer. Even now, telling you this, I can feel the walls shifting just beyond my vision. The boundary between what I see and what exists has thinned. I keep hearing that same soft command, threading through the silence of my room. Stay still. The further I went, the more the building disobeyed geometry. Corridors folded inward, corners doubled back, and every breath echoed like a footstep behind me. My heartbeat sounded foreign in my ears, as though someone else was wearing my chest. I should have run for the highway and never looked back. But some part of me, a stubborn fragment of logic, needed proof. If I could see it, document it, maybe I could make sense of the madness gnawing at my world. That foolish hope pulled me deeper. The hallway opened into a massive archival room lined with shelves of file boxers. Dust coated everything except a narrow path, as if someone or something had been pacing there recently. I pulled a box down. Inside were folders stamped existence, nullified in bold red letters. Every participant photo was slashed with ink. Names were smudged into nothing, like erasures in reality. I found one folder that still bore Elliot Graves. My stomach turned. It was me except. The photo was not the one I remembered submitting. In this picture, my eyes were too wide, and my smile was stretched unnaturally. Scrawled beneath, integration, imminent. A metallic clang echoed from deeper within the stacks. I crept toward it, fingers trembling. Ahead, a door flickered between open and closed. States every time. I blinked. It changed. I chose a moment when it was open and slipped through. The room beyond was vast, a cavern carved out of unreality. Glass observation windows dotted the walls, showing glimpses of other rooms. Other times, one showed the waiting room full of volunteers, another showed it empty and decayed, a third showed my apartment kitchen, except a shadow version of me stood there, grinning at nothing. A soft, wet sound like fabric tearing underwater made me turn. From the far end of the chamber, something was stepping into being. At first it was only a ripple in the air, like heat. Distortion. Then it thickened, reflecting the walls in impossible angles. Shapes flickered across its surface. A child's face I almost remembered, the man in the suit from the waiting room, my own reflection. It was not one thing, but every possible version of observation, layered and hungry. I stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of instruments. The clatter echoed and multiplied, each sound returning slightly altered. The entity tilted its head, or maybe the room itself bent. Wherever I looked, it moved in the corner of my vision. Always unobserved, but always closer. A whisper crawled into my mind. Not through my ears, but directly against my thoughts. Observe to create, look away to feed. Another noise jolted, me a scuff of shoes. From a side passage, a young man emerged. The nervous college kid from the first day. His face was pale, eyes wide with the knowledge that we had already lost. It follows sight, he whispered hoarsely. If you do not look, it moves. The entity shivered, fragments of mirrors sliding across its body. A dozen distorted mouths formed and vanished. The kid grabbed my arm. There's a containment chamber phase 2 testing north side of the lab. We can trap it. We ran, zigzagging through corridors that warped behind us. Doors shifted, hallways elongated, but somehow the route bent toward a huge cylindrical chamber. Its glass walls were etched with sigils and mathematical formulas, half scientific, half occult. Panels flickered erratically, but a single console glowed steady green. The entity's presence pressed at the edges of the room, reflections and monitors twisted. Shadows leaned the wrong way. The kid shoved a manual into my hands. Activate the lock when it is inside. The entity slipped through a wall, reforming at the chamber's threshold. For a moment, it chose my face and my own body, perfect down to the ragged breath. Then its smile bent backward. Hey, the kid shouted, stepping forward, waving his arms. The thing turned toward him, shadow stretching. He looked at me, eyes wide. Run when I distract it. Before I could protest, he bolted down a side corridor. The entity followed, flickering between shapes. A tall woman, a child, a version of me. Screams echoed, then silence. The whisper returned, curling into my skull. Integration incomplete. Observe, a metallic screech. Then the entity reappeared, slithering back toward me, leaving no trace of the kid. I backed toward the chamber, heart hammering. At the last second, I stepped aside. The creature glided forward, curious, sliding across the threshold. The air around it bent, and the sigils on the glass flared white-hot. I slammed my palm on the console. The chamber hissed as thick steel shutters closed, cutting off the view. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then the glass vibrated. 1,000 faces mine. The kids, strangers, pressed against the barrier from the inside. A chorus of whispers flooded the room. You cannot. Watch us! Words scrolled across the screen. Phase 2 successful integration achieved. My breath caught. The whisper was not in the room anymore. It was in me. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over a fallen chair. The lights steadied. The building was quiet again, but the calm felt artificial. Like a stage set after the actors had left. I touched my temple, half expecting to feel a second heartbeat beneath the skin. The air seemed to still, to rehearse. The chamber stood silent, but a faint ripple disturbed its surface like something pacing just beyond the glass. The whisper in my mind coiled tighter, gentler now, almost affectionate. The chamber sealed with a hiss, and I realized the whisper was still in my head. I staggered out of the containment chamber room, my breath rasping against the walls like an intruder. The corridors felt wrong, too clean, too linear, like the building had scrubbed away its previous distortions to lull me. For a moment, I let myself believe the nightmare was boxed behind glass. Then the overhead lights flickered in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. Every step I took, a faint echo followed a half-beat late. It was not my own. The stairwell to the surface yawned before me, but my foot hesitated on the first step. A low, affectionate whisper brushed the inside of my skull. "Leaving already?" I froze. The whisper was warm now, coaxing rather than threatening. "You are not real," I muttered, desperate for my voice to feel solid. "You are only what you are observed to be?" The reply slid across my thoughts. "And you are mine." The stairs stretched unnaturally long. My legs ached as if I had climbed for hours when the exit door finally appeared. I shoved it open and staggered into the night. Outside, the world should have felt safe. Instead, the air was too still, the stars too bright as if reality itself was trying too hard to look normal. The empty parking lot glittered with frost under a full moon. My car sat where I had left it, but the windows reflected a dozen versions of me smiling, frowning, some standing where they should not be. I forced myself to look away and drove. The highway was deserted. Streetlights blinked out one by one in my rearview mirror, as if something followed in the darkness. When I finally reached my apartment, relief surged until I noticed the door was already unlocked. Inside, everything was exactly as I had left it. To exec. The coffee mug I had abandoned on the counter was still steaming, even though I had been gone for hours. A TV commercial played on mute, but the actors' mouths were whispering my name. I shut off the screen, but the faint static hum remained. In my bedroom mirror, my reflection lagged a half-second behind me. When I blinked, it did not. Sleep was impossible. I sat on the floor, scrolling through news sites and forums for anything guinea hint the experiment was public knowledge. Nothing. Every mention of the lab was gone, scrubbed from the internet. Threads I had bookmarked were replaced with error messages. Even cached versions were blank. I typed a post detailing everything. The volunteers, the entity, the chamber. The page refreshed before I could hit submit. My words were gone. A new line appeared at the top of the screen. Do not warn them. The cursor blinked, taunting. A sudden knock rattled my door. 3 soft taps, perfectly spaced. I crept to the peephole. No one. But in the hallway, mirror across from my door, a shadow leaned closer, watching. I backed away, heart pounding. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It contained only a single word. Observe. The lights dimmed. My own voice whispered from the kitchen. You should not have looked. The sound of the rocking chair, the one I had never owned, creaked from my living room. I grabbed a kitchen knife and edged toward the sound. The chair was there now, rocking lazily. Sitting in it was me. My double smiled, skin rippling like liquid silver, eyes reflecting every memory I had. Integration achieved, it said. My voice doubled. Phase 3 begins. I lunged, but the blade sliced through empty air. The double vanished, the rocking chair stilled. The whisper returned, softer than ever. You let me in when you saw me. My phone buzzed again. A video had been saved to my gallery, one I had not recorded. It showed my bedroom from a high corner angle. I watched myself sleeping fitfully. Then, in the video, something unfolded from the shadows and stood over my bed. Its form was indistinct, except for the eyes my own. The video ended with a faint chuckle right next to the camera. I bolted from the apartment, driving aimlessly through the night. Every reflective surface I passed, storefront windows, puddles, the rear-view mirror showed flashes of the entity's shape. It never followed directly. It did not have to. It was already inside. By dawn, exhaustion dragged at my bones. I parked at an empty rest stop and tried to gather my thoughts. Birds chirped, too loud, their calls looping unnaturally. A mother and child walked by a perfectly ordinary scene, except the child's shadow lagged 2 steps behind. My phone buzzed once more. A new video had appeared, labeled with today's date. I pressed play. It was me, sitting right here in my car, looking into the camera, but my lips moved out of sync with my voice. Someone will find this, my double said. They will think it is a story. They will watch. It leaned closer, and by watching, they will open the door. The video ended abruptly. I felt the whisper coiling, stretching beyond me, reaching for anyone who might hear, might believe, might look. So I began to record this, speaking directly to you. Yet, if you are hearing this, you have already let it glimpse you through my words. That is how it spreads, through observation, through belief. Do not replay this. Do not look for the lab. Do not search my name. But you will you not? Curiosity is a door that never stays shut. I can feel it stirring even now. The highway around me looks normal, but every billboard flashes messages only I can see. Integration complete. The clouds above twist into familiar faces. The world is rearranging itself to welcome its new guest. I will keep driving until there is nowhere left to go. Maybe I can outrun the horizon. Maybe not. But if tomorrow you notice your reflection blink when you did not, if you hear your own voice whisper from another room, remember this. You agreed to the experiment the moment you watched. And the side effects, they are only beginning.